Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, February the 23rd, 2024. There has been a story recently about a former Russian helicopter pilot by the name of Maxim Kuzminov. Now, last year he defected to Ukraine. And he flew his helicopter worth a lot of money from I think an airfield in Kursk to I think Poltava in Ukraine. There were two other crew on board the helicopter. They didn't know what was going on. I think a technician and a navigator. And it was considered to be a great success by the Ukrainians. You know, they were very happy about it. They got a helicopter. They got a pilot. So his name is Maxim Kuzminov. He was a captain in the Russian army. It sort of looked good for them. And then recently we've heard that this helicopter pilot is dead. He was in Spain. And he was shot quite a lot of times, at least 5 times. May also even have been run over by a car. So one might assume that perhaps Russian security services had tracked him down. So I wanted to consider this story, because it is a tragic story. It's not just tragic for this pilot, Maxim Kuzminov, who defected. He thought he was doing the right thing. It was also tragic for the people on board the helicopter with him, the technician and the navigator. They were apparently liquidated, whatever that means, by the Ukrainians. One story is they were trying to they immediately tried to escape back to Russian lines, or I don't know, but anyway, they got killed. So you can understand why the Russians might be doubly upset about this. Triply. Not just did this pilot defect to Ukraine. Not only did he take a very expensive helicopter with him, I think he also took some important jet parts for other aeroplanes. He also gave information to the Ukrainians. But 2 of his colleagues died because of what he did. So you can understand that he's probably not very popular in Russia, and there was an incentive to track him down and kill him, because of course that gives that sets an example. And of course, in a recent video, I looked at the cases of some people who had who'd gone abroad. There was Alexander Litvinenko, who was an FSB agent. He went to the UK and he was killed with polonium-210. And then there was, in a earlier age, Georgy Markov, the Bulgarian playwright in the 70s, who went to London and broadcast for BBC in their Bulgarian service, and he was killed with an umbrella, apparently, poison pellets. So, I know that's Bulgaria, but that was under Soviet control. So there is form here for this kind of thing, and so I want to look at Maxim Kuzminov's horoscope. I haven't found many sources for it. I found a source on Wikipedia. I'm going to go with that time. Wikipedia says that he was born on June the 19th, 1995. And so I want to look at his chart. I don't even know what time he was born. I don't even know where he was born. So I just wanted to consider, can we look at a chart which is so vague, where we have so little information, and get any idea about what was going on last year, and indeed what was going on perhaps sort of a week ago. Was it 13? Yeah, apparently it was on February the 13th that he was killed. he was in Spain. So yeah, I do want to look at that. I mean, this isn't really about the war in Ukraine. I mean, I know it is about the war in Ukraine, but it's about the horoscope of someone who defects to the other side. It does happen, and stealing planes is always something that intelligence services are trying to do. In 1966, Mossad, was involved in something called Operation Diamond, where they stole they managed to, what was it? There was a Christian Iraqi pilot who flew a MiG. They managed to. He was in touch with Mossad, and he was able to get a MiG back to Israel. In 1971, during the Indian-Pakistan War, there was a Pakistani pilot who had sympathies with Bangladesh's struggle for independence, and he tried to get his plane back. He tried to defect in his plane, and in those, the Operation Diamond for Mossad, that was on August the 16th. This attempt by a Pakistani pilot to defect to essentially to India was on August the 20th, 1971, I think. And this happened again in August of last year. I mean, I'm sure that's complete coincidence. I'm just pointing it out. But before I do all that, before I look at the horoscope of Maxim Kuzminov, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is February the 23rd, 2024. So here is the chart, top right. That is Maxim Kuzminov. I think he's sort of talking after his defection. And I will be looking at his chart very soon. So what's going on today? Well, I suppose the main thing going on today is that we now have Mercury moving into Pisces. This is a very big change, Mercury moving from Aquarius to Pisces. Mercury in Aquarius works quite well, or worked quite well. Mercury rules the air signs by night, so certainly in the hours of darkness, Mercury is strong. It's in its own triplicity, but then when Mercury moves to Pisces, there's Mercury moving into Pisces. We see a dramatic change. Mercury moves from the sign of its rulership to the sign of its detriment. Mercury doesn't function very well in Pisces. Mercury is supposed to be a rational, communicative sign, focusing on perhaps logic, and it moves into this water sign of Pisces. It just can't. It can't cope there. That doesn't work well. And matters are made worse by the fact that Mercury is immediately combust the Sun. So Mercury is close to the Sun, and so suddenly we see a big change. It's much more difficult to think straight. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to jump to conclusions. We're going to look at the wrong things. We're going to allow emotional concerns to get in the way. And so that is really something to consider today. It perhaps is a difficult time to make decisions, and we're perhaps not helped by the fact that when Mercury moves into Pisces, it makes a semi-sextile aspect to Pluto. In other words, Mercury and Pluto are 30 degrees apart. We're trying to make sense of the world, and yet it's not just that we're confused at an emotional level. That Pluto represents something quite difficult, heavy, perhaps a point of obsession. We just can't get it out of our minds. And it's just preventing us from functioning properly on a mental and an intellectual level. at the same time, the moon, there's the moon, still in Leo, is making a square aspect to Uranus. Okay, that square aspect to Uranus is going to be more important if you're in, say, East Asia, Australia, New Zealand, but I think it's going to affect us all. And it's going to make us angry about certain things, certain stubbornness, certain obstinacy. But if we're pushed, we might all of a sudden explode. Moon square Uranus. It is in fixed signs. Moon in Leo, Uranus in Taurus. They're both fixed. So there is certainly a resistance to change there, and we can be very willful. Now, I should point out that at 8:37 p.m. New York time, the moon moves into Virgo. So this doesn't affect the old world. If you're Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, moon is going to be in Leo all day. But this evening, if you're in New York, after 8:37, moon will be in Virgo. Might be a bit of a change. Some of the intensity of the day might start to ease up. If you're an earth sign, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, you might feel that things are a bit easier. Things are running more smoothly, and I always give Aries a commentator who several times has said that I've been I've been too negative on Capricorn. So if I don't know where that commentator lives, but if he's in America, in the Americas, I thought I'd just mention that just to cheer him up. But 8:37 p.m. the moon does move into Virgo. New York time. Now, if you're in the West Coast, then that happens at 5:37 p.m. So on the West Coast, you've got the whole evening with the moon in Virgo. So that might be good if you're, for example, in California or in Washington State or Oregon. In terms of midpoints, Sun is conjunct the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. You can see there's the Sun, there's Mercury, there's Saturn. I think I've sort of already talked about this, because it's not just something lasting for one day, but Sun on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. It is about saying goodbye to people. It can be, this full moon taking place over the weekend is on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. So we are starting to deal with the build-up to the full moon. And, I did describe this full moon as being a sort of a farewell full moon. Many of us are going to start to realize that it is time to say goodbye to things. Some things they've fulfilled their purpose, but they're not really any useful anymore. So that might not necessarily be people, but situations, certain things, we don't need anymore. And if we want to make progress in the future, we might have to part company with them. But, Jupiter is on the Sun node midpoint. So if we say goodbye to one thing, we can say hello to something else. It is a good time for, expanding social networks, perhaps changing social networks. So perhaps some parts of our social network are sort of running into disuse, but then other parts are sort of building up and and are activating. Maybe it's like the subscribers to my YouTube channel. I see my subscribers, and it's sort of, I got 2,000, just under 2,700 subscribers or something like that. And I'm wondering how it works. Does it work like, am I really building up this subscription base? Or actually is what happening is that early subscribers, people get used to my videos, and then they get bored, and then they just, they just had enough of me. So in fact, my active subscribers are always are probably much smaller than 2,700. As after maybe people subscribe for a certain amount of time, but they don't bother to unsubscribe. So perhaps it gives me the fantasy that more people are interested in my videos than actually are. But that's the point about networks. So maybe for some of us, there may be parts of our social network that sort of exist in theory, but in practice they're sort of disused, in decay, perhaps redundant. But that's okay, because with Jupiter on the Sun node midpoint, and also with Venus on the Mercury node midpoint, it is a good time for creating new networks and adding new people to the network. When you say goodbye to something, it means you're creating a space for something else to move into your life. So that's the broad picture for today. I'm afraid it is dominated by the fact that Mercury's position is weakening. No doubt about it, and that might affect us, regardless of your star sign. But anyway, I'm now going to do my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, February the 23rd, 2024. Aries. You still feel that Venus-Mars conjunction. It's today. I don't want to talk a lot about it, but I just want to remind you, Aries, that Venus-Mars conjunction is still operational. I know it was exact yesterday. It is starting to separate, but you can still feel it. Venus is conjunct Mars, which is your ruler. So that does certainly add to your charisma and your attractiveness. So, no problems on that score. Also, you continue to be very, creative, very focused on yourself and what you can do. But, Aries, you may feel that something is coming to an end. Yes, you've got lots of ideas, you've got lots of energy, but you may feel that you're not quite getting the results you'd like to get. Maybe it's like the people you're talking to, the people you're communicating with, just don't have enough enthusiasm. There may be a sense that things are just a little flat. And I think you have to accept that situation. What you mustn't do is try too hard to make things happen. Because, if you do, you'll just cause trouble. You'll find that there are, people you come into contact with are just resistant. They're not going to want to do what you want to do. You might try to persuade them. Even if you can persuade them, it's still, you are flogging a dead horse here. So do consider that. And what you mustn't do, Aries, is spend money in an attempt to make things happen. Perhaps if you feel bored, you feel that something needs extra effort. You might end up buying something, or you might feel you need to spend money on entertainment. I wouldn't actually. I know it's it's Friday. People like to do stuff on Friday night, but certainly if you're in Europe or Asia, Australia, New Zealand tonight, don't spend money on entertainment if you're feeling bored, or you feel things aren't happening. Slightly different picture if you're in the Americas, but still, I think you do have to accept, Aries, that something that's been going on over the last few days is past its peak, and there's probably little point in trying to keep it going unless it's sort of moving in a fairly organic way. But I'm not saying it need be a bad day. I don't think anything bad is happening. And as I said at the beginning of this description of your sign, I think you continue to be charismatic. I think that relationships continue to be an area where you can be successful, but you need to consider the possibility that some people are moving away from you a bit. And you have to ask, why are they moving away from you? Maybe they're moving away because they really are moving away. But maybe it's also, as an alternative, it's because they're changing a little. And so if you stay in one place and you don't show some flexibility, then yes, naturally someone might move away from you because they're moving into different areas. So perhaps you need to consider why someone might be moving away from you. Maybe that means you have to listen to them. Listen to what they're saying. Consider what they want. I know I put a lot of emphasis on your creativity, but perhaps it's time when you need to consider other people's creativity. And by considering other people's creative needs, you perhaps can stay relevant. Taurus, you are in a state of mind where, in one sense, you do feel that you need a bit of space. You continue to feel you need space, but I think you're in a sort of a state of some recovery as in like recharging your batteries. I think that many Taurians are feeling that their batteries are pretty much recharged, that you've kind of got a lot of your energy back, and that you're ready to sort of get back into the flow of things. And this is certainly especially the case if you're in the Americas this evening. With the moon moving into Virgo, then you may feel sort of some new energy, so that might provide you with some excitement or some new interest. Though when the moon goes into Virgo, the moment the moon goes into Virgo, it starts making a full moon. So yeah, if you're in the Americas, it's a different picture this evening. But don't push it. You have recharged your batteries. You are recharging your batteries, and you don't want to get into something too early. I'm talking about a square aspect between the moon and Uranus, which happens today, and so Uranus is in Taurus. It's in your sign, and so you do have a need to be yourself, to be an individual, perhaps to be a rebel. Your inner Taurian rebel is very much alive and well, and it needs to be channeled properly. Don't allow yourself to just cause chaos for the sake of it. And I'm thinking particularly of your domestic life, home, family. You are looking for a domestic environment which is secure, where there are no surprises. But you don't want to. But there is a danger that you create surprises, perhaps through your own carelessness, or a family member does something and you overreact. I don't think that's going to be helpful. So Taurus, you do need to be sort of extra considerate when it comes to your domestic life. If something happens that you weren't expecting or you don't approve of, don't necessarily hit the roof. Try to work out what's going on, or perhaps you need to allow the situation to develop to an extent, where you actually understand the underlying dynamics. But you must not forget your career. It still matters. So what's been happening? Well, in a way, since for the last month, is that there was a lot of stuff moving into Aquarius, and from a Taurian perspective, Aquarius has a link with career, business, how we get ahead in life, how we move forward. And hopefully that has really propelled you, has encouraged you to be ambitious, and that's good. But this action in Aquarius is really starting to break up now. Yes, we have Pluto in Aquarius, and that will be there. Pluto will be in Aquarius for most of the year. But, Mercury has just moved out of Aquarius. The Sun moved out of Aquarius. So that Aquarian build-up is nothing like as strong as it used to be. But nonetheless, there is a conjunction between Venus and Mars in Aquarius. This conjunction was exact yesterday, but I still feel that it is important. It may be a Friday, but end of a week and all that. But you still have the capacity to be taken seriously if you are going into work today, if you're doing anything connected with business, or if you're involved in some organization, might have nothing to do with business, might be a non-profit or just something you're involved with. You are very charismatic, and people will listen to you, and at the same time you may feel that you have more space. This conjunction between Venus and Mars, which is very much a two-edged sword for you, Taurus. I think it did make you more charismatic, but we have to remember that Mars is representative of other people, because Mars rules Scorpio, your opposite sign. And so with Venus moving away from Mars now, the conjunction having peaked, you may feel that you're now getting some breathing space. Maybe you were dealing with someone who was a domineering personality, and they weren't perhaps giving you full respect, but now you are starting to escape. You're starting to create some distance, and I think that is a good thing. And as far as close relationships, or indeed any relationship, the fact that the Venus-Mars conjunction is now separating may indicate that some relationships are actually starting to lose their intensity. You and someone else perhaps aren't as close as you used to be. Now, that doesn't mean to say we're talking about a relationship which is coming to an end. I suppose some relationships at least have their cycles. At times you and someone else are very close, at other times you drift apart. And perhaps we're moving into a time when there's a little bit of distance coming in all relationships. Even if you're dealing with someone that you've been with them for decades, still there is a bit of distance. And actually, I think that bit of distance is welcome, because in a way it gives you more freedom, allows you to consider what you want to do, and that's perhaps something you should be focusing on. Gemini. Well, Gemini, I like to be positive. I'm a Gemini. I kind of like to say nice things about myself, don't I? But the fact is, Gemini, that Mercury is your ruler, and Mercury is in a somewhat difficult position, because Mercury has moved into Pisces. Mercury does not work well in Pisces, all things being equal. So what you have to do, Gemini, is navigate the situation. I am not universally just saying, oh, this is bad news, Mercury's gone into Pisces. I think you have to be aware of the problems. Being a Gemini, you are a sort of rational, logical person. You pride yourself on your ability to think clearly, to look at the facts. And, all things being equal, Gemini, you're not the most emotional person. That's just the way it is. It's not. You do not really engage with the world through your feelings. It's usually through your thoughts. I say all things being equal. I'm not saying anything absolute. Not every Gemini is different, but there can be a danger now with Mercury in Pisces that your emotions trip you up. You might think you're being sensitive. You might think you understand what's going on, but actually you don't. There are things happening which you just don't get. And there's also a danger of deception. So don't take what people say at face value. And you may be moving into a situation where you're having to deal with something that you don't really understand, that almost blinds you. And if you can't see, you can't move clearly. You can't move. You can't move. You can't move where you want to go, and difficult things could happen. Yet, the moment Mercury moves into Pisces, you start feeling, quite ambitious, actually. So, at a time when you're becoming more confused, it's a time when you're starting to become ambitious. And, one of the most difficult times for Geminis is when they make a firm decision. Geminis are quite capable of making firm decisions. They feel, this is it, they've made a decision, everything's clear, and now it's all easy. There's a temptation to do that, and I think you have to be careful. While I think you are right to be ambitious at the moment, the basis of your ambitions and the details of your ambitions may be completely wrong. There may be certain things you have totally misunderstood. So, Gemini, you really do need to bear that in mind. Another thing, Gemini, don't take action on the basis of ideology. I know Geminis can be quite fluid in their beliefs, but there are a few beliefs you have that are really strong. You're not letting go of them, and maybe these beliefs are not being helpful. So do consider that. So overall, Gemini, I would urge you to tread carefully, because things are not quite as they seem. Turning to relationships, indeed finishing with relationships, I don't think it need be such a bad day, provided you don't jump to conclusions. In many respects, you are more sensitive, and this does help you to get close to people, to get on with people, to understand what people want. So that's good, but in another sense, you are a bit vulnerable to deception, to getting the wrong idea about a relationship. So use your sensitivity. Say, oh yes, you are sensitive, more sensitive than usual, but don't reach conclusions about anyone based on your sensitivity. Just be open to all possibilities, and through that openness, I think relationships can be an area where there can be sort of development and growth. But yeah, just be a bit careful in that area. Cancer. Well, Pisces is a sign that has a concordance with Cancer. Cancer and Pisces are signs. They're both water signs. So Mercury moving into Pisces may not be such a bad thing for a Cancerian. It's not just that Mercury is moving into Pisces, it's the fact that Mercury is moving out of Aquarius. And I don't think that while Mercury was in Aquarius, Cancerians were particularly happy about it. I think with Mercury in Aquarius, you were encouraged to be somewhat introspective. Mercury is about the way you think, and you could have had sort of deep feelings about things, but feelings which were distracting you and which were sort of preventing you from engaging with the world outside. And so with Mercury moving into Pisces, although Mercury doesn't really work very well in Pisces, I think it's just for you, I think it's easier. I think it's because Cancer is a water sign. So I have said that Mercury in Pisces is just a bit over-emotional. It's difficult to think straight with Mercury moving into Pisces. But I think for you it's okay, because I think you understand the issues of oversensitivity. And I don't think you're going to fall into the kinds of traps that I was talking about, for example, when I was just talking to Gemini, and when I was talking about Gemini. And with Mercury in Pisces, you have the opportunity to think about new things. And you can just feel it. You can feel that something's changing. You can also feel that you need some variety, and perhaps sort of new ideas, new people, new experiences. And so I think overall that's really good. I mean, I think that is something definitely to look forward to, and also Cancer in terms of relationships, you may find that certain relationships are getting easier, perhaps because they're just less hard work. You're not under so much pressure. You don't have to use so much guessing, and there's having to overthink relationships and sort of analyze them. Not so much now. I think that situation is starting to ease off. Still, Cancer, you are a water sign. You are an emotional person, and it can't be denied that you do have strong feelings. And sometimes those strong feelings can make things difficult. And today, with the moon is your ruler. It's making a square to Uranus, and so with that moon making a square to Uranus, there could be times when you just do get a bit angry, and you're not really in the mood to. In the mood for changing or compromising or listening or thinking. There's something getting stubborn about something. That's sort of more at the beginning of the day, though, and more the case if, for example, you're a Cancerian in New Zealand or Australia. But still, that is something that you do have to be aware of. I should also say, Cancer, that you might just get a general feeling over the day that something is coming to an end, and actually that might be quite a good feeling, that something is coming to an end. You're just being in a situation that was perhaps getting a bit tedious, having to deal with stuff that you weren't comfortable with. But you're now realizing that it's not going to go on forever, and you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, if you're in America, then by this evening you may actually come out of the tunnel. You might feel that things really do change, and that you you're able to sort of move into a different way of being. You can be more open and more communicative, but still, that is this evening, and you do have to be in America for that. So, I mean, I don't want to emphasize that too much. And finally, Cancer, I should point out that your star sign is your sign. I keep saying star sign because I think the problem with me saying star sign is that it assumes that everyone is looking at these readings from a perspective of the sun, and I do understand that there are people looking at it from a perspective of the ascendant, or even the moon. So I should kind of say your sign, but there is this build-up to a full moon over the weekend, and your sign is very sensitive to the lunation cycle, and so I think you're starting to feel that the full moon is coming up, and that a full moon is going to create change, and is going to bring about perhaps a realization. Perhaps you can see this realization coming up. Okay, it's not the weekend yet. The full moon is not exact until tomorrow, but still you can feel that something is going on there. So it might be a good idea to prepare yourself for it. Leo, the moon is moving through the last degrees of your star sign. In fact, if you're in the Americas, then this evening it moves out of your star sign. So I think for many Leos, it's a time when you might want to wrap a few things up. Some things are coming to an end. You've done your bit, and there's probably not much more you have to do. So it could be a time when perhaps you should sort of relax. There's nothing more you have to do. Particularly as it's Friday, end of a week, you're running into the weekend. But relaxation may not always be easy. The moon is making a square aspect to Uranus. That aspect, it's important because it does hit some major angles of your chart. The moon is in Leo, your star sign. Aquarius is in Taurus. That represents an important angle for you, especially relating to the whole way in which you try to present yourself to the wider world. You're aware that there are things going on, events are going on out there. If you're working, perhaps it relates to that. But just things aren't the way they used to be, and you may want to respond to this. And it's true that if you want to, then you can really make things happen in quite an explosive way, and people are going to pay attention to you. And I know that Leos like to be paid attention to, but is that really too desirable? I mean, getting attention just for the sake of it is not necessarily a good idea, and perhaps it would be better if you saw this moon square Uranus as a more sort of private event. It might be quite dramatic, but it's probably not a good idea to make a big fuss about it. The moon is void of course today. Certainly, okay, if you're in the Americas, it comes back onto course in the evening, but overall, certainly for the working portion of the day, for most of us, the moon is void. That means that it's made its last major aspect to a traditional planet, Sun through to Saturn, before leaving the sign. And so when you've got the moon void of course, it means, well, that's it. The action is over. There's nothing more is going on, and that might sound boring, but on the other hand, it means that there's nothing difficult going to be happening, probably. So moon void, of course, means you can perhaps afford to just chill out a bit with that. Looking at relationships, I have been going on and on and on about the conjunction between Venus and Mars, and that Venus-Mars conjunction was yesterday. So Venus and Mars are starting to move apart. And Venus and Mars are, of course, in Aquarius, your opposite sign, which means, we're talking about the other. You are a Leo. Aquarius is your opposite sign, and it's connected with relationships. And so Venus-Mars conjunction does show that there have been some events going on in your relationships, people to deal with, charismatic people to deal with, attractive people to deal with, perhaps. But this Venus-Mars is not as strong as it used to be. So perhaps you might be looking at someone who you used to find quite impressive, but today they might not seem quite so impressive. Also, Mercury has moved out of Aquarius, so that's one fewer planet in your opposite sign. A little bit less emphasis on relationships. That gives you, a greater ability to sort of think things through and to sort of feel things through. So there's still things going on in terms of relationships, but just I think that you're starting to have a greater understanding of what's going on, and there may be one person who may not be quite as amazing as they used to be. Virgo. So Virgo, Mercury is moving into Pisces. That's important for you because, Mercury is your ruler, and Pisces is your opposite sign. So you're moving into a time when you do have to consider other people. It does matter. I mean, you are already you're already in the middle of this process because more and more planets have been moving into Pisces. Okay, Saturn has been in Pisces for nearly a year, but a few days ago the Sun went into Pisces. Now Mercury is moving into Pisces. So you are finding that you can't do all you want to do without having to consider the social dimension. Perhaps without considering, you have to now consider various sort of one-to-one relationships, people who have power, people who you need their permission in order to get something done. So just doing stuff on your own is just becoming increasingly difficult. So I think you do have to accept that. It's just the way it is. And this does, though, make you vulnerable if you listen to people too hard. Yes, people are important, but that doesn't mean to say people can be trusted. It doesn't mean to say that people are reliable. It doesn't mean to say that people are going to tell you the truth. In fact, I think that there are some people who could just make things very confusing for you. They could create a cloud of chaos, and you might find yourself being deceived. I'm not saying that someone is literally going to try to deceive you today in a sort of malicious way, but perhaps you will misunderstand what they're saying. So you really do need to consider that. You just haven't got all the facts, and what you hear is probably not going to be at all helpful. Okay, it might give you a hint, but you've still got to do some of the work yourself. You have to listen to people, you have to talk to people, but the final decision is down to you. And when you make that final decision, that has got to be something that is independent, and it's something that you have to take responsibility for that. So yes, you may have to spend a lot of the day in other people's company, even if you're not meeting them face to face, whether it's on the phone or Zoom or whatever. But having considered everything, particularly if you're dealing with different people with different views, but having considered everything, you have to fall back on your own resources and make your own decision, because that's the only way to do it. If you try to do it any other way, then there could be problems. And while you're making your decision, you do have to consider what matters. And I think today there is some danger that Virgos get obsessed about something. There's just one thing you can't get out of your mind. You just keep obsessing about it. And it feels something that always has to be taken into consideration. If you focus on this, you still got to take that into consideration. It may be something that is actually completely irrelevant, but you still think it's important. You just can't let go of it. I'm not saying you should let go of it, but you also need to consider the possibility you are dealing with an obsession, and you need to take a step back and try to be a little reasonable. And in that way, you can perhaps sort of make the right decisions. But you've got to be reasonable. Now, finishing with relationships. I mean, really, I've been talking about relationships a lot in this section when I've been talking about your sign. Relationships are what matters at the moment. But it's not necessarily a time to be rushing into anything. Certainly you shouldn't be rushing into signing agreements or getting really close to someone. Not right at the moment. Mercury has just moved into Pisces. You're getting used to a new situation. And Virgos do take time to get used to a new situation. I know that Virgo is supposed to be a mutable sign that can change this way and that way and whatever. But this is quite a dramatic change, Mercury moving from Aquarius to Pisces. You just need to take time to get your bearings, and don't rush into making decisions. I think that is really important. Libra, you continue to be fairly sociable, typical Libra, but you might have a certain awareness that things are running out of steam. Yes, you can be in contact with your friends, you can talk to colleagues and associates, and there's people have lots to say, and that's great, but there's a question about whether it's useful, whether you're getting anywhere, or maybe you just feel you're just going over old ground, just talking about something again and again and again. And really, maybe you talked about it yesterday, maybe you talked about it earlier in the day, maybe you talked about it last week. It's just been talked about before. And so you might have to ask yourself a question: what are you doing this for? What is the point? I think, but privately, when you look at some of the people when you look at some of the people around you, you may get a sense of deja vu, a sense that you've seen this before. Someone is saying the same stuff. Someone is repeating themselves. Someone has got perhaps a limited knowledge about a subject, such limited knowledge that they're having to backtrack and just repeat themselves in not so, but maybe using different words, maybe even using the same words. So your social life is important to you, but there's a certain sense in which it's not very satisfactory, and I think your own feelings about certain people may disturb you. You know, Librans, typical Librans, I mean, obviously not every Libra is typical, but Librans, you know, they like to be nice, and I suspect that many Librans like to have nice thoughts about people. That's only natural, isn't it? And you might actually find yourself having some thoughts about people which are not nice at all. You might think, well, you know, this person is boring. I don't actually like this person, to be really honest about it, but I'm not going to admit it. So I don't know what you do about that. You don't obviously have to say what's on your mind. But if someone's getting boring, or even if you don't decide you don't really like them or don't really trust them, then maybe in a sort of a very subtle way you should start to act on this decision. And you know, this is perhaps also borne out by the conjunction between Venus and Mars. So you remember, Venus is your ruling planet, and you know, I have talked a lot about this conjunction over the last few days, and this conjunction between Venus and Mars was exact yesterday. And so yesterday you may have felt that you were particularly close to someone, or close to a particular situation. It was really close, it felt very, very present, but now you're drifting apart. And maybe this says something about you and at least one other person. You're starting to see a space, a gap. And where there's a space, where there's a gap, there is a little bit of objectivity. You can start to see someone for what they really are. And because of that, you can start to come to a conclusion about whether or not you like someone, trust someone, want to spend time with them in the future. And you know, even if you're in a long-standing relationship with Venus starting to move away from Mars, you're starting to understand that relationship more, and perhaps understand what the nature of that relationship is, and you know, how best to deal with it in the future. Scorpio, you very much feel today that the week is coming to an end. I mean, I know the week always comes to an end on Friday. I mean, or at least the working week. I know the week itself comes to an end on Sunday, or even Saturday. It depends on how you work, but how you work it. But right now for Scorpio, I think you do feel that something is coming to an end. I think that's how you feel, and you might want to back off a bit. You know, what's the point? You've done your work. Fair enough. Is that the right approach? Well, you see, the moon is moving through late Scorpio. Sorry, late Leo. Moon is moving through late Leo, and it's it is a high-profile sign for Scorpios. You know, in the Scorpio horoscope, Leo is often associated with work and career, and you know, with the moon in Leo, in many cases, it has been this impulse to you know, make things happen. But although things are seem to be winding down, I would suggest you keep going as long as possible. You know, one reason is that the moon is actually moving to a fixed star called Regulus, the royal star. So the royal star, you know, it's about meeting important people. I mean, royalty even. But it's important people depending on one's situation. You know, anyone can be important. It depends. If you're working, an important person might be, I don't know, a manager. If you're, in terms of your social life, an important person just might be, you know, a high-status friend, someone who everyone thinks they're wonderful. So Regulus could be anyone. Okay, it could be royalty, but it doesn't have to be royalty. So there are opportunities from a working point of view, if you're interested in career business, there are opportunities to link up with someone who could be very relevant and very important for your future. And if such a meeting or such an interaction takes place, it could be at the end, just right at the end, last minute thing. So do keep your options open. And so if there's someone important who you've been meaning to get in touch with, it's important relative to you. I'm not talking about, I don't know, writing an email, sending an email to King Charles or anything like that. Someone who's important to you, and you've been meaning to get in touch with them, but you haven't been getting in touch with them, then maybe now's the time to do it. Just writing an email might be all it takes, because, as I said, the moon is conjunct Regulus, and maybe there's some way you can take advantage of that, Scorpio. Also, what's going on is that we've had this Venus-Mars conjunction. And I have felt that this Venus-Mars conjunction is going to be very important for Scorpio because, Mars is your ruler, and Venus, the planet of relationships, has been right conjunct your Mars. So that Venus-Mars conjunction was exact yesterday, and it is starting to separate. So it may be the case that someone is starting to move away from you a little. You perhaps don't quite see eye to eye. They can see you, you can see them, and perhaps you can see each other clearly, because you're not as close as you used to be. And so you need to be aware of that situation, perhaps, in terms of relationships. And maybe you need to say something, or address something if you can see a difference between you and another person, and that particularly if that person is important, you need to ask, what does it mean if there's a difference? Now, a difference can be good. If people respect each other's differences, that can often be the bedrock of a good relationship. But it could be a difference that could get larger. Could get larger and larger, and could in the end sort of split you apart. I mean, that is possible. Although not, if it's a long-term relationship, chances are, Venus-Mars conjunctions are not exactly rare. But it is something that needs to be pointed out, and maybe there's going to be issues about ideas. You and someone else having ideas that are different. And it suddenly becomes clear that they're different. Now, I'm coming from a perspective of different ideas as a Gemini. You think you should be able to get on fine with people if you have different ideas. But, when we look at what's going on in society, different ideas, different opinions have really been able to split people and break people up. That in terms of, for example, politics and the whole divisiveness of it, or we've had different people's different attitudes to whether it's to Trump or Gaza or Ukraine, whatever. These fundamental issues can split people up, and I know that, Scorpio, you are very passionate. Once you get passionate about something, you often you don't know when to stop. But a bit of objectivity might be important. You don't want an idea to break up a relationship, because that would be a shame, and I think it would be unnecessary. But maybe I'm just talking about it from the perspective of a Gemini. Maybe, as far as you're concerned, ideas really are important. One final thing, Scorpio. Sorry to end on a bit of a negative note, but some Scorpios may have some, this is a minority of Scorpios, might have some slightly unusual inclinations. They might be attracted to things which are not particularly savoury. Now, that may just be ideas that aren't very savoury. Scorpios can be quite into, what's going on in the news, sort of all the sort of violent and destructive things going on in the news. Some Scorpios, and they can like to talk about it, and they might find it interesting, but maybe not everyone else is interested. So perhaps you need to be careful about what you put your energy into, but don't feel that. The less savoury sides of society can in any way define you, because you might be tempted in that direction. Just getting involved in something that's not very nice, it just piques your interest. Or perhaps you feel you need to express yourself with reference to things that are not very nice, not very pleasant, that might even in certain cases have a criminal edge. Is that really what you want to do? I mean, it may be what you want to do, but I'm just warning you there. I'm warning that small minority of Scorpios who are sort of interested in that kind of stuff. But just do be a bit careful. Do show a bit of discretion. Sagittarius, you're starting to make up your mind about something. It's taken you a bit of time to make up your mind, but I think things are starting to become clearer. You can see the way things are. You've certainly got all the information you need. There's no new information is required, and so because you've made up your mind, you're ready. You're ready for a transition. You're ready for a transition from perhaps theory into action. And I think tomorrow's Saturday, the full moon. Tomorrow's full moon is going to really help that. It's going to really sort of clarify things for you. But between now and the full moon, I don't think there's anything really that has to be done, because you've worked it all out. And in fact, Sagittarius, you may have worked out aspects of your fundamental philosophy on life. And okay, you're never going to work out your fundamental philosophy in life over the course of a day. I'm being over dramatic. But you do have to understand, with these daily readings, I'm looking at it on quite a short-term level. But okay, should I say your fundamental philosophy for the week, or for the next fortnight, maybe, or at least for the next month? Maybe that's better. I don't want to trivialize it. But I think you're a Sagittarius. You know what I mean. Sagittarians perhaps can be more tolerant of people like me trivializing things than perhaps other signs. So I think that is good, and I think that actually sets you up nicely for next week, because the full moon is going to make more. It's going to clarify even more things for you, and so you're going to have a really good idea about what needs to be done. But on the way, it might not be such a good idea to listen too hard to other people. Other people have their views. Other people have their opinions. But in many cases, they're completely mistaken. So I would be very careful about taking other people's advice, trusting people, because in many cases, they just haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They've just got some fundamental misunderstandings, and you could try to argue with them, you could try to explain the truth to them, but I don't think it would work. And these misunderstandings may relate to your home, your family. It may also relate to your work. I think that some people at work, if you're working, really don't know what they're doing. And it's perhaps got worse over the last 24 hours. or just people are maybe just distracted, totally focused on things which are unimportant, but everyone is obsessed about it, and so that means, Sagittarius, that I do think that it's going to be very important that you're able to think for yourself, and also consider alternative ways of getting your information. It may be, for example, that there are certain people you've been relying on, and these people are actually showing themselves to be completely useless, and so you're going to have to find new people, a different group of people to interact with, to get information from, and that may be something you need to be working on today, and perhaps over the weekend. Looking at relationships, I've already said that other people can't be trusted. Even the people close to you may be in a state of confusion. Even people who were until very recently completely rational may now just not know what's going on, and they may be focusing on the wrong things, and it may be difficult for you to know what to do. I think it's a situation where if someone is important to you, and they seem all at sea, you maybe have to step in to provide some direction, even some leadership. It may not be something that you feel that you're fully able to do, and changing people's minds is going to be difficult, not least because people may not be completely open with you. You may tell someone that they're wrong about something, or suggest that they're wrong about something, and they're going to say, "Oh yeah, you're right." Then they'll say that they've changed their mind, and then the moment you look away, they'll just do it anyway. People are a problem. Could be a problem, and perhaps the people close to you need special attention if it's really important. I mean, if you feel that they're perhaps in danger of making a wrong decision, you may have to spend a lot of time trying to get things back on the rails. Capricorn. I know I've had some criticism in some quarters. I don't know if it's criticism, but being too negative about Capricorns. So I'm going to start by saying that the moon is about to move into Virgo. Virgo is an earth sign. Virgo and Capricorn have a natural relationship. Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus, they're all earth signs. And so the moon going into Virgo for Capricorns is really good. But the moon doesn't go into Virgo until 8:37 p.m. tonight in New York, which is 5:37 p.m. this evening in California. So for most of the day, the moon is not in Virgo. Indeed, if you're in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, the moon is going to be in Leo all day. So in many respects, it's Leo that matters. And like it or not, Capricorn, with the moon with the moon in Leo, it's a time when things are, more private. That's where the moon is. It doesn't stay very long in Leo. I mean, go through all 12 signs in a month. But there is still some serious thinking and feeling to do, and you really do need to consider your boundaries. But don't get too obsessed. I think some of the things that were perhaps obsessing you are sort of moving into the past. I think Capricorn, you are starting to feel more relaxed, and you are finding it easier to express yourself, not least because Mercury is moving into Pisces, and Pisces from a Capricorn perspective is very much connected with communication, short distance traveling. But with this Mercury in Pisces and communication, you are able to communicate better today, I think. Particularly on an emotional level. It's not about saying loads and loads of things. In fact, Capricorns don't like people that talk too much. Mercury moving into Pisces, keep it light. The reason you need to keep it light is because if you have serious communications with people about important matters, there is a danger that you are misled. There's a danger that people say stuff that is simply untrue. And they may not be deliberately deceptive. They just don't know. They don't know the facts. So important matters should possibly be not discussed. But trivial matters that are of no consequence, just gossip, just talking about stuff because it's fun, that's great. That's something that Capricorns can do, and it's it's going to be nice. It's actually going to be quite nice for Capricorns to just talk about nonsense. You might enjoy the change. See what you can do. But do be careful if you are traveling, particularly short distance. You might think that you want to go somewhere and it's going to take 5 minutes, perhaps in the car, and you go there, and but with Mercury moving into Pisces, you're not really used to that energy yet. None of us are used to that energy of Mercury moving into Pisces, and so journeys which you thought were inconsequential could actually turn out to be more difficult than you'd imagined. So possibly Capricorn, you shouldn't go somewhere unless it's really necessary. So do consider that. You might think 5 minutes in the car is nothing, but it could be something. And even if the journey itself is inconsequential, what happens when you reach your destination may be an issue. Just do consider that. Do consider that possibility. Finishing with relationships. I mean, okay, I've already talked about relationships in a way that I've sort of said that it's a time for having trivial conversations with people, not for having serious conversations. But as I said earlier, the moon is still moving through Leo for most of us. Certainly moving through Leo until this evening, and all day if you're not in the Americas. That does say something about some of the people close to you. Partners may still be in quite a sort of introspective mood, because the moon does rule Capricorn, your 7th house, and so by tracking the movement of the moon, you get an idea. You can often track what partners and other people close to you are actually doing or thinking, or whatever. They're still in quite an introspective state of mind, and they're not really in the mood for massive interaction. They're probably not, at the same time, they're not particularly open-minded. So you might have suggestions, but I don't think those suggestions are going to be taken particularly seriously. But things are changing. I think relationships will change, maybe this evening if you're in the Americas, but if not, then that would be tomorrow, when the moon really establishes itself in Virgo. And as I said at the beginning, the moon moving into Virgo, Capricorn, is something very much for you to be looking forward to, and the full moon tomorrow. It could be interesting. Could represent. I won't say an interesting challenge, but it might give you a chance to see the world for what it really is, and be able to benefit from those insights. Aquarius. So there's been this conjunction between Venus and Mars, which I've been going on and on about, and it's in your star sign. I would recommend that you continue to take advantage of this conjunction. This conjunction was exact yesterday. It's now starting to break up. But while it's still around, and it's not going to be around for much longer, at least in its immediate powerful phase, you are charismatic, you are attractive, and people are going to listen to you. So yeah, do take advantage of that in a general sense. At the same time, there does continue to be an emphasis on relationships because the moon is still in Leo, your opposite sign. But you may feel that that things are kind of moving on. That perhaps things aren't as intense as they used to be. There may be one or two people who are becoming a little more distant. This is because as the moon is moving through late Leo, getting ready to change sign this evening. If you're in the Americas, it does change sign, moves into Virgo. So at least one phase, perhaps, of a relationship is coming to an end, and a new phase is about to start. So do consider that. Now, one positive thing I should say is that the moon is in your opposite sign, but the moon is actually moving towards the fixed star Regulus. Regulus is the royal star. Now, it may be when the moon starts moving onto Regulus. It depends on your time zone when this is. But at some stage in the day, there may be a contact you can make through another person, with someone important. Because Moon on Regulus is a star connected with royalty. Relative royalty, whoever is royalty from your particular perspective. So there may be a chance to get in touch with an important person via someone you already know. So it may be about just making the most of your of networks, that kind of thing. So do bear that in mind, and don't ever think that someone is useless, that they're of no further use to you, because when you least expect it, someone may deliver. So give them the opportunity. Now, another thing going on is that Mercury is moving into Pisces, and it's perhaps not just the point that Mercury is moving into Pisces. The point is Mercury is moving out of Aquarius. There have been a lot of planets in Aquarius, but the Sun has left your sign, and now Mercury has left your sign, and that Venus-Mars conjunction as I've just said, that Venus-Mars conjunction is separating, and sooner and eventually Venus and Mars will move out of your sign. So perhaps you're not quite the center of things as you used to be. Maybe that's a good thing. You are quite a detached person. You value your independence, and so with all this stuff in Aquarius, it just may have been too much. There may have been too much focus on you, and with Mercury moving into Pisces, that may just make things just a little bit easier. Though for many Aquarians, Mercury moving into Pisces might be of financial relevance. You might have to start thinking about your money, what you have, what you own, what you don't have, and what you don't own. And you may feel that you have to sort of, address yourself to financial issues, maybe. I wouldn't rush into it. Mercury moving into Pisces might be making you think more about money. Trouble is, Mercury doesn't work very well in Pisces, and Mercury is moving towards a conjunction of the Sun. So while Mercury is in Pisces, particularly now at the beginning of Pisces, there is a danger that you get very confused, that you don't fully understand what's going on financially. And if you try to get financial advice, if you ask someone, what to do financially, you may not be told anything useful, and you may be told things that are just plain wrong. So maybe Aquarius, you just have to think for yourself. Pisces. Well, the main event is Mercury moving into your star sign. Your star sign is starting to see quite a lot of action. You've had Neptune in your star sign for years. You've had Saturn in your star sign for 1 year. I think, off the top of my head, Saturn moved into Pisces, is it March of last year? You've had Sun moving into Pisces a few days ago, and now you've got Mercury moving into Pisces. So, yes, that does give you a certain amount of strength. And it also seems that you have a certain amount of responsibility. I mean, you already have a lot of responsibility, more responsibility than the average Pisces is used to, simply because Saturn is in your star sign. Saturn is a planet of responsibility, and as I said, Saturn went into Pisces in March. Is that right? Let me just check. Saturn went into Pisces. Yeah, Saturn went into Pisces around the 7th of March last year. So Saturn has been in Pisces for just under a year. But there is responsibility here. You may start to find that there are people that just think you're wonderful. They really trust you. Because they don't have the answers. But do you have the answers? I mean, maybe you do. But just because someone is prepared to trust you, just because someone asks you a question, doesn't mean to say that you have to reply. And so a little bit of humility, Pisces, might be required, and you have to be honest if you don't know something. If you don't know something, it's just important to say that you don't know it, because you don't want to deceive anyone. I have talked about deception on and off for all the signs, for many of the signs. Simply because Mercury is going into Pisces, and Mercury, for most people, Mercury in Pisces doesn't really work very well. Mercury is in its detriment in Pisces, because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. But for you, it's kind of different, because Pisces is your sign, and what you don't want to be in a situation is where you are the one who is doing the deceiving. I'm not talking about deliberate deception. It's just something about the way you are could be misleading. And especially if people are prepared to trust you. If people want to trust you, it's so easy to respond to that trust. They almost want to be told something by you. They almost want reassurance from you. And in certain cases, by reassuring someone, you may actually be making matters worse. For example, don't tell people that everything is fine if it's not fine. Sometimes it really isn't fine, and so do be ready to be honest about that. It might not be what you want to do. As a Pisces, you just want to go with the flow, but you can go too much with the flow. Still, I understand that some people who come here wanting to know what's happening with their sign, want to know about relationships. And I have to say, Pisces, that relationships look good. Relationships have to look good, Pisces, because Mercury rules Virgo. Virgo is your opposite sign. So Mercury represents another person, and that other person is moving into Pisces. That other person is moving into your zone of control. They're moving into that into an area where you are in charge. So that means, by definition, that relationships must prosper. So I think it's going to be a very good day for relationships, Pisces. But of all relationships of all kinds, doesn't have to be romantic, could be business, friends, whatever. So relationships of all kinds can prosper. But, Pisces, you do need to exercise some responsibility. So it's time for the I Ching. And I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was the cauldron. It's a very powerful hexagram, the cauldron. It's about bringing things together and creating something out of them. If you're into the tarot, then there's a certain connection, in my opinion, between the cauldron and temperance. Some of the tarot cards with temperance, they have a cauldron or some pot, and some sort of angelic figure pouring things into the pot. And temperance is about taking all your resources and bringing them together and creating something wonderful out of them. And the cauldron is rather similar to that. It's not just any cauldron. It's not just some kitchen pot you bought in IKEA. It's not. It is something quite formal, of a religious nature, and you're taking everything you have and you're putting it into the cauldron, and it's just all your talents, all your abilities. You bring them together, and very very often there is a sense of sacrifice with the cauldron. Sacrifice. You take something, you perhaps give something up that's quite sort of material, and you transform it into something higher. I mean, I suppose you could say you take wood, which is material, you burn it, you put it under the pot, and it transforms into something else. So that really is good. So that's really what you need to do. That's how you need to start off the day. You need to bring all your resources together. And as far as what it actually means, the bottom line is moving. So the bottom line moving, couple of ways of looking at that. I mean, one way of looking at that is that the bottom line might suggest low status. So it might mean that even someone of low status can make a name for themselves, can actually get recognized. So if you are in a situation where you feel yourself to be low status, I mean, I don't mean that necessarily in a permanent way, just right now in a current situation you're thinking about, if you feel yourself to be low status, if you don't have resources, you don't have respect that you feel you deserve, then the cauldron suggests you can change this situation. It is going to change. You are going to get recognized. You can be successful. You just have to bring it all together. Another view is that the cauldron, it represents some success. Apparently the symbol is that the cauldron is turned upside down. And the reason it's turned upside down is that there's a blockage. I think that's what Greg Winkup said in his translation of the I Ching. There's a blockage. Something is just stopping the success happening, but it's nothing serious. It's just a blockage that needs to be removed. So consider, what is that blockage? Once that blockage is gone, things should really move. And this hexagram, it does move because the bottom line moves. And it transitions to hexagram 14, possession in great measure. By and large, this is one of the best hexagrams in the book, and it suggests that all your efforts with the cauldron are going to bear fruit. Possession in great measure. You will have whatever you're looking for within reason. Obviously, I'm not saying you're not going to win the lottery. Okay, you might win the lottery, but I'm not saying that. It's possession in great measure. It's what you're trying to achieve. Now, possession might be money. So if you're looking for money, if today you're trying to get hold of something, you've got, once you've sorted yourself out, you've got a good chance of getting it. Possession may just be all of your talents, what you possess. What you possess is your experiences, your talents, your abilities, your capacity to be respected. It's all coming together. And perhaps what this is just, once that blockage is removed, you get it all. It all comes together. So you do have to consider your situation, whatever it is you're looking for. So whatever it is you're looking for, looks to me as if you really can get it. You know what has to be done. Bring it all together, and it will all come together. So so the I Ching today looks pretty fortunate. I always get worried when the I Ching is too fortunate because I don't know. I don't want to disappoint anyone. That's really important. I know there's always pressure when you're an astrologer, you're trying to make predictions. There's always pressure to predict good things. I try to resist that pressure because I just don't want to deceive. I just don't want to deceive anyone. So I don't like to be too positive. I said that before, but I have to be honest. It does look positive today, and possession in great measure is a great hexagram. Okay, so I am now going to talk about Maxim Kuzminov, the Russian helicopter pilot who was killed in Spain. So I was kind of working on the basis of one sort of Wikipedia page. I tried to get sort of translations. It was translated. It was in English, and it was in Russian, and it was in Ukrainian. I don't speak Russian and Ukrainian, but you've got this sort of translate button. So let's see if I can make sense of his chart. I assume, here's his chart. Here's his horoscope, Maxim Kuzminov. I don't know where he's born. I don't know what time he's born. But Wikipedia gave a birth date of June the 19th, 1995. So just a reminder, he was a helicopter pilot. He was a captain in the Russian armed forces. His story we heard is that he started watching videos while he was there, and he just realized that Russia was in the wrong, and he got in touch with Ukrainian intelligence or whatever. I'm not quite sure how he does that, but there's incredible communication between Russia and Ukraine. They say they don't want to compromise. Right? Ukraine says it doesn't want to negotiate, but it seems they're talking all the time. Of course, they speak the same language, pretty much. I mean, I know Ukrainian and Russian are different, but I think a lot of Ukrainians speak Russian. I'm not, so they're talking all the time, and apparently over a 6-month period, they arranged his defection, and I think he was offered money. Quite a lot of money. That's reasonable. He's bringing a whole helicopter, modern helicopter. I think the helicopter was made in 2016. A whole helicopter to them. So, what kind of person is Maxim Kuzminov? Well, I don't know because I don't have his time of birth. I don't have his date of birth. Sorry, I do have his date of birth, but I don't have his place of birth. So, there are some quite exceptional things about Maxim Kuzminov's chart. He was the one he was unfortunately he was killed on I think February the 13th in Spain, southern Spain. So Maxim Kuzminov has all of his traditional planets. When I say traditional planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, in mutable signs. So we have got his Sun in Gemini, Moon in Pisces, Mercury in Gemini, Venus in Gemini, Mars in Virgo, Jupiter in Sagittarius, Saturn in Pisces. So those are the mutable signs. Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, incredibly mutable. Mutable means changeable, moving from one thing to another, not wanting to be tied to any one thing. So you could say that someone who defects from one side to another, that's quite a mutable thing. Loyalties are fluid. Perhaps even loyalties to people are fluid. He's a Gemini. Geminis are all over the place, aren't they? Geminis can be sort of very friendly one moment and can go in another direction the next moment. So I think that's really shown, and also. He has Mercury opposition Jupiter. Very strong Mercury in Gemini, very strong Jupiter in Sagittarius. So that Mercury-Jupiter opposition is certainly restless. Now, on the surface, the idea that he spent ages, a lot of time looking at YouTube videos, and this changed his mind. This made him decide that the war was completely wrong, and that he wanted to defect. On the surface, that sounds ridiculous. The sort of thing someone might say after the event. But looking at this chart, I think I believe him. I can imagine someone with Mercury opposition Jupiter and all that mutable stuff spending all their time watching YouTube videos and deciding they want to defect to the other side. So I can imagine that. One point, by the way, this is a chart. I just want to show you another chart very quickly. This is a chart of a man called Matyur Raman. And Matyur Raman was an officer in the Pakistani Air Force, and he was born in Bangladesh. And during the 1971 war between Pakistan and India and Pakistan about Bangladeshi freedom, he tried to defect. He tried to steal a plane and defect and move over to the Indians. Not because he was supportive of India, but because he was Bangladeshi. he tried. It didn't work out because he tried to. He was in a passenger seat of a jet, and he had a fight with, and in the end the jet crashed, and both him and the other person were killed. But notice he has got Venus in Sagittarius opposition Jupiter in Gemini. It's kind of, I know it's different from the Mercury Jupiter opposition that Maxim Kuzminov had, but I thought I just noticed that. So yes, there is incredible mutability there. And I also suspect that he was I guess that he was a really good helicopter pilot. Reason I think he was a very good helicopter pilot is he's got a Mercury-Venus conjunction in Gemini. That Mercury-Venus conjunction is really good. I mean, it's a Mercury-Venus conjunction. They're very talented. I have talked about these conjunctions in the past to say that they are about artistic talent, business talent. But flying a helicopter is really difficult. I mean, from what I hear, flying a plane sounds pretty difficult, but flying a helicopter is a real nightmare. And so that Mercury-Venus conjunction in Gemini, it is difficult, and he must have real talent there. And you can see he's got Mars in Virgo. Again, Mars in Virgo is a male planet. He's a man. It's where he's put his energy. Mars in Virgo is a lot of detail. And so he really was able to focus on the detail. I mean, I think, having to work in 3 dimensions, I don't know how one flies a helicopter, obviously, but I suspect that Mars in Virgo really did help him in terms of being a really good helicopter pilot. I mean, I think, he had to fly very low when he did his escape. He was, I think, he was probably really good, and he has a T-square. There's his Jupiter opposition Mercury, and then he goes his Mercury-Venus conjunction, opposition Jupiter, square Mars. There is a certain sort of anger there, I suppose. He's trying to resolve this. Saturn was approaching the opposition of his Mars when he was killed, but it wasn't all the way there. But I think it would have been a difficult time for him. We also see he's got Moon conjunct Saturn, Moon in Pisces. We don't exactly know where his Moon is because we don't have his time of birth or his place of birth, but he has Moon conjunct Saturn. So there are a few difficulties there, I think, and then maybe there's some harshness. Gemini, we mustn't forget that because of a result, we must never forget that as a result of his action, 2 people died. Not just him; he eventually died, but there were 2 other people in the crew. There was a technician, there was a navigator, and they were apparently liquidated by the Ukrainians, whatever that means, when that plane landed. So that shows a lack of human loyalty to the other people that he was flying with. That can be the dark side of Gemini. Geminis can be a bit schizoid. They can cut themselves off from human feeling. They can do that. And of course, he's got Moon conjunct Saturn. So that's his chart. I think that. I think with that chart, perhaps the Russian military should have been aware of that chart and should have been aware that maybe he was a problem, given the situation. If they'd known, I don't know. That chart is difficult, although I do think that it does indicate that he was probably a really good helicopter pilot with that Mars in Virgo square, the Mercury-Venus conjunction. So. What was going on? What was going on when he fled? Because he fled in August. So this is the this is the chart of when he fled. He said 4:30 that he left Kursk, an airfield in Kursk. I assume that's Russian time, not Ukrainian time. So that's for time for his flight. Remember, he's a Gemini, and the Moon at that time. The moon has just gone into Gemini. By the way, it's called Operation Sinitsia, and apparently Sinitsia is Ukrainian for a tit, as in the bird, the greater spotted tit, I suppose. So I suppose you have the idea of a bird flying, or a titmouse, I don't know, but that's what Sinitsia means. So moon just goes into Gemini, and it that kind of chimes with the fact that he's got all these Gemini planets, and I suppose from a perspective of when you're trying to do something, you need to make sure that the planets are in a good position. So you want to wait until the moon moved into Gemini before doing this incredibly dangerous thing, flying a plane from Kursk, flying a helicopter from Kursk to Poltava. That would have been a very dangerous mission, and he had to fly very low. I think he said 5 meters high. So clearly, it emphasizes again, he was a really good helicopter pilot. I think the Russians started shooting at him when he realized what he was doing, but he managed to get there. And he had 2 people on board who were, I think, were trying to stop him doing what he was doing. But so he must have shown a lot of ability and talent and, I suppose, luck. So the moon is in Gemini. Notice how the moon is going to an opposition of Saturn. Now, moon going to an opposition of Saturn might indicate that the mission wouldn't work, but then it was a very fast thing. He would have got there, he would have reached his destination well before the moon hit Saturn. So yes, he made it. And you can see that Venus is making a square to Uranus. Venus is making an exact square to Uranus. So you could say that is an abrupt breaking of relationships, certainly a relationship with his country. But maybe the moon square Saturn does say something about what happened to him in the end. Now, as far as the transits are concerned, I was looking at his natal chart. There's not a huge amount going on, but there are a couple of things. There are a couple of things going on which I kind of think are interesting. So we have got on the inside, we've got Maxim Kuzminov's chart. Remember, don't have a time of birth. On the outside, we've got the time of the flight. And what is, I think, probably the main thing going on here is the fact that he's got his sun at 2735 Gemini. So we know that. And Neptune is at 2717 Gemini. So he's got Neptune square his sun during this whole thing. So it's kind of a period of his life where he starts negotiating, with Neptune in late Pisces. He starts talking to the Ukrainians. He gets this offer. He can't. If he defects, he'll get a load of money. I think I may be wrong. Didn't they say something like $500,000 or euros, $500,000 for a helicopter, $1 million for a plane? I don't know, something like that. Of course, it's not so much money. $500,000. Remember, once you've defected from, if you're a Russian member in the Russian armed forces and you defect, and particularly if people are being killed, but I bet he didn't know that people were going to get killed, they're going to try to get you. You're going to need more than $500,000 because he's 28 years old. He's got to live the rest of his life. How is he going to do that? That requires a lot of money. He probably should have been asking for more like $10 million. I don't think $500,000 was quite enough. But Neptune. So Neptune is exactly square his sun, and I'm wondering. I'm wondering about deception here. I mean, perhaps his own self-deception. Thinking about what he can achieve, why he's doing it. If he was talking to Ukrainian intelligence, I'm sure whatever they told him, he accepted it. It's not about whether you support Russia or Ukraine. This is a human situation. What is right for him? And I just think that Neptune square his sun was really difficult. Was not good. For him, he probably made the wrong decision. And I'm not saying it as a pro-Russian comment, but for him, and he hadn't fully got it. And I think we know that. What does he do? He goes to Spain. Okay, he might have been under some kind of protection in Spain, but if you can take money to deceive your country, it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? I mean, people in Ukraine would have known what he was doing, and some of those people in Ukraine may have been working for the Russians for whatever reason, through love or money or whatever reason. So it works both ways. But perhaps as a Gemini, he thought he was too. He thought he was. Maybe some Geminis think they're clever. Perhaps he thought he was too clever, and he thought that his defection would not be repeated by someone else. But there was someone else on the other side who, like him, was working for the other side, and that's perhaps why he was discovered in Ukraine. Was discovered in Spain, and of course the Russians are going to probably want to kill him as an example, to make sure no one else does that again, to make sure they will always get you. Then there is his solar arc direction. So again, the solar arc directions are kind of approximate. So when looking at his solar arc directions, there is one thing about his chart that I haven't mentioned that I do want to look at you see, he's got this Mercury-Venus conjunction in Gemini, particularly, but he's also got Neptune at 2453 Capricorn. So in other words, he has got Neptune sesquiquadrate his Mercury. We don't know precisely how exact it is because we don't have his time of birth, and Neptune is kind of sesquiquadrate his Venus. So Neptune sesquiquadrate his Mercury would be about misunderstandings. It can be about deception. It's about someone who is vulnerable to deception, and it's someone who is capable of deceiving. And it's also about someone who gets a wrong idea. He got an idea about how it would work, probably, when he defected to Ukraine. But yeah, he'd probably got it wrong, at least from a perspective of his own safety. Now, of course, you could say that he did it for some higher cause, and okay, fair enough, but we should never forget that the navigator and a technician were liquidated. And as far as the solar arc directions, the solar arc directions, so I did his solar arc directions. That means I moved every single planet in his chart 28 degrees. So looking at his solar arc directions, there is a single solar arc direction that I find interesting. Whoops, that's the wrong one. There are his solar arc directions. That's the wrong one. His solar arc. Okay, his solar arc directions. His directed sun. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. So his solar arc directed sun was at 24 degrees 55 Cancer, you will notice. So let me just explain that. So his natal sun is at 2735 Gemini. So we move that on about 28 degrees. This is the direction for his death on February the 13th, 2024. And you can see that the solar arc directed sun is at 2455 Cancer. His Neptune is at 2453 Cancer. So he had solar arc directed sun opposition his Neptune when this whole thing happened. We don't have a time of birth, but so it's difficult to know whether it was happening at the time of his death or his defection. But I think it emphasizes the point, the Neptune point. It was a very Neptunian event. He had overall he had transiting Neptune square his Sun. He had his solar arc directed Sun opposition his Neptune. So we got a sort of double signature there. And this is also confirmed by his. Let me just look at his solar return for 2023. So this was his solar return for before he left. So this would be a couple of months before. I suppose the main thing about that solar return, it emphasizes the point that he's got the Sun square Neptune, and you see at that solar return, the Sun is square Neptune. So yes, so it was really a very Sun Neptune thing, this defection, and I think that he. I don't think that he fully understood what he was getting himself into, and I suppose there was probably a lot of self-deception. But we don't have a time of birth, and it would have been nice to have an ascendant, but what I think his horoscope shows is, I think the horoscope itself is very descriptive of him as a person. I hope I've got the birth date right, but his mutability is really, really quite amazing. The fact that he doesn't have a single traditional planet every single one of his traditional planets is in mutable signs. And I really do believe that he spent a lot of time looking at YouTube videos, and I really do believe that could have changed his mind. And I suppose he was being a typical Gemini, and I think his undoing was transiting Neptune and his the solar arc Sun being opposition his Neptune. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I must emphasize I am being neutral. I'm not particularly interested in this, I'm not trying to demonstrate any political point here. I'm just looking at one person who has been in the news. I'm sorry he was murdered, but astrologically, I think his case, the case was very interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. If you did enjoy the video, I would be grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you like the video, I would of course be grateful if you were to subscribe, and if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.